Hi, my name is Ravi. Welcome to my channel Payment Talks. Welcome back. This week we will look into each and every field of MT101, understand their functional meaning and their correspondent mapping to PAIN.001. Why we need to learn MT101? Just to remind, MT101 is still supported by Swift. In fact, at this moment, it does not have an end date for complete removal like what we had for MT103 and MT202. Most of the corporates are still sending those MT101 FIN files for their payments. So, it is imperative to learn the MT101 fields and its mappings to PAIN.001. We shall also cover the MT101 mapping with PACS.008 mapping in case in your organization you receive the MT101 still from corporates and have to process into PACS.008 as regulatory requirement. Please note, this PACS.008 that we map is the outgoing PACS.008 from debtor agent. For all the individual messages, we shall discuss only the block 4. We have already seen the high level structure of MT101. It contains sequence A, which is non-repetitive and contains file level information. Next, it contains sequence B, which is repetitive and contains transaction level information. Fields which appear in both the sequences are mutually exclusive, meaning they can either present in sequence A or sequence B, but not both. We have also seen the conceptual structured comparison of MT101 and PAIN.001. This understanding helps us very much in understanding the fields and the mapping to PAIN.001. Let us look at the individual fields of MT101. As we know, MT messages follow strict sequence as per the spec. We shall also follow the same order as mentioned in the MT101 spec. First, we shall see the sequence A fields. The first field is sender's reference tag 20. This is mandatory field in MT101. Format is 16x. This is unique reference as assigned by the sender of the message. This is a point-to-point ID which changes at each hop in scenarios like relay scenarios. The PAIN.001 equivalent is message ID in group header. As it is point-to-point, it is not mapped to outgoing PACS.008. This is also mapped to business message identification in business application header of PAIN.001. The second field is customer specified reference tag 21R. This is optional field. Format is 16x. This field, if present, refers to the entire message even if it contains multiple transactions. Tag 20 changes at each hop, whereas this is the ID which is given by the first initiator of the message, usually the corporate. Corporates use this ID for their own tracking and reconciliation purposes. When this ID is present, the usage rule says that there should be single debit on the customer's account even when there are multiple transactions inside. Basically, this means a batch level debit, which indirectly states that all the transactions should be of the same currency, most probably same as the debit account currency. If this field is not there, then debits of each transactions can happen separately. Basically, this field is a binding field of the multiple sequence B transactions. As this is at batch level, the PAIN.001 equivalent field that can be used is payment information ID in payment info section. But as per the derived mapping rules, this field is not mapped to PAIN.001 or PACS.008. The next field is message index upon total, tag 28D. As we saw in previous videos, corporates due to MT101 constraints try to send multiple MT101s in a single FIN file. But how do the bank understand that they received all the transactions to process? This is the field that bridges that gap. This field basically is like a page number. This field tells the sequence number of the MT101 in the whole file. Another important attribute is that it will also tell how many total messages are there in the file. Using both the information, the bank will reconcile whether it was able to parse all the messages properly or not. Usually, when there is an error like some MT101s are not able to be parsed, usually the whole file will be rejected. In ISO, there is no such feature, so there is no PAIN.001 equivalent field. Do not get confused with the number of transactions field in PAIN.001. That is different. Also, this is not mapped to PACS.008. The next field is instructing party tag 50A. Firstly, this is a tricky part as tag 50A is attributed to ordering customer, that is debtor. Then how come tag 50A is now instructing party? Here lies the empty letter options features which tries to solve this issue in a complicated way. Tag 50 when using the letter option C and L becomes the instructing party. The same tag 50 when using a letter options F, G and H becomes debtor. Confusing, right? That's how empty messages are designed. In ISO, these letter options are removed and each of these variations are given separate XML fields. In this case, initiating party and debtor separately. Coming back to the field, by definition, this is the customer which is authorized by the account owner and account servicing institution to order all the transactions in the message. And this is only to be used when the instructing customer is not also the account owner. Basically, we are referring to authorized initiation scenario. You might have guessed the PAIN.001 equivalent field. It is initiating party in group header. As we already discussed, the initiating party in ISO is a party field and not agent field. Here, instructing party is also a non-financial entity. That is why in MT there is a network validation that when option C is used to mention BIC, then it should be a non-financial institution BIC. Option L, party identifier, is basically a name or any identification that can be recognized by the debtor and debtor agent. Here it is account owner or ordering customer and account servicing institution. Remember the tripartite agreement concept? This is the same. This field can be mapped to the initiating party field in PACS.008. The next field is ordering customer tag 50 with F, G, H letter options. The spec says this field as optional, but I am saying this field as mandatory. I will clarify this when we discuss the same field in sequence B. The format options can be seen here for each letter option. This field identifies the account owner whose account will be debited for the payments. Can you guess the ISO field? Yes, you are right. This is debtor field. Now, how the information from these letter options will be mapped into the section of debtor in ISO will be taken as a separate video. We shall discuss the common patterns of mapping from MT to ISO and also ISO common components and what information is needed inside each party or agent sections of ISO will be covered separately, as that is fundamental to how we process the modern ISO payments. For now, just remember the data from this field, whatever is the letter option, will be mapped to debtor section of ISO. The PAIN.001 equivalent field is debtor itself under payment info section. It is also mapped to initiating party when instructing party in MT101 is empty, as the initiating party in PAIN.001 is mandatory field. The same is mapped to the data section of PACS.008, which is under the credit transfer transaction information. Please note the debtor here is a non-financial institution. The next field is account servicing institution tag 52A with the letter options A and C. This field is optional. The format options can be seen here for both A and C letter options. This field identifies the financial institution that services the ordering customer's account, that is the bank where the funds will be debited for the MT101 instruction. Can you guess the ISO field? Again, you are right. It is debtor agent. As mentioned, we shall discuss the detailed mapping later. The PAIN.001 equivalent is debtor agent in payment info section. The same is mapped into the debtor agent section of PACS.008, which is under the credit transfer transaction information. Please note the debtor agent here is a financial institution and it is mandatory in PAIN.001. The next field is sending institution, tag 51A. If you observe, the field contains capital A and not small a. Why I am stressing this point is usually tag contain small letter a, which indicates that the field can have multiple letter options. But when the tag contains directly the capital letter, then it means that only that letter option format is applicable for that field. Actually, I had this confusion for a very long time, so I don't want my viewers to have this confusion like me. Okay, coming back, this field is optional. The format option, as I just explained, is the A letter option format. This field identifies the financial institution that transmits the MT101 message. It indicates the bank responsible for forwarding the instruction when this institution needs to be explicitly stated. Can you guess this field now in ISO? You guys are brilliant. Yes, it is forwarding agent in PAIN.001 message used in relay scenarios. It is inside the group header. But as per the translation specs, it is not mapped to PAIN.001. There is no forwarding agent section in PACS.008, so this field is not mapped in the PACS.008. The next field is requested execution date, tag 30. This field is mandatory. The format option is that of a date in YYMMDD format. This field specifies the date on which the ordering customer requests the payments to be executed by the account servicing institution. PAIN.001 also has the field with the same name, requested execution date, under payment info, which is at batch level. In MT101, this date is applicable for all the transactions inside the message. If different date is required, the customer, then the MT101 has to be split into multiple MT101s. In PACS.008, there is no direct requested execution date. This field represents the intended debit or execution and not necessarily the settlement date. But the closest equivalent depending on processing is the interbank settlement date in PACS.008. After all, interbank settlement date is derived from the execution date during processing. This may not be true for payments which are held during the processing, like for sanctions, fraud, etc. The last field in sequence A is authorization, tag 25. This field is optional. The format of this field is 35x, meaning plain text field. This field contains the authorization or approval reference related to the MT101 instruction. It is used to indicate that the payment request has been validated, approved, or authorized according to the customer's internal or bank agreed procedures. In PAIN.001, we have the field with the same name under group header. Please note that this is not a technical field of authorization. There is no equivalent field in PACS.008, as PACS.008 does not carry customer authorization data. With this, we finished the sequence A fields. Hope you have better clarity on the fields now. Now let's move on to the sequence B, which is repeating section. All the fields that you are going to see now in sequence B belong at transaction level. Each sequence B typically creates one PACS.008 outward. ISO has the capability of batch PACS.008, but it is restricted to single transaction per PACS.008 using the usage or scheme guidelines. That is, in normal bank-to-bank implementation, PACS.008 typically carries only one transaction. CBPR Plus does the same of limiting the PACS.008 and even PAIN.001 to single transaction and no batch concept in CBPR Plus. If you keep this in mind, then it will be easy to understand rest of the fields. The first field in sequence B is transaction reference, tag 21. This field is mandatory. The format of this field is 16x. The field contains the unique reference assigned by the sender to identify the individual payment transaction within the MT101 message. This is a point-to-point reference for transaction. The PAIN.001 equivalent field is instruction ID inside the credit transfer transaction information. But as per the spec, it is mapped to payment info ID. As MT does not have exclusive batch segment, mapping this to both payment info ID and instruction ID is okay. But if you have more payments, mapping it to payment info ID does not make sense. But mapping it to instruction ID at transaction level is correct. As this is point to point, it is not mapped to the outgoing PACS.008. The next field is FX deal reference tag 21F. This is optional field applicable for cross-border payments. The format is 16x. This field contains the foreign exchange deal reference associated with the individual payment transaction. It links the payment to a previously agreed FX contract between the customer and the bank, ensuring the correct exchange rate and settlement conditions are applied. In ISO PAIN.001, this information is embedded in the exchange rate section in contract identification field. This information is between customer and debtor bank only and will not be forwarded in PACS.008 further. The next field is instruction code tag 23E. This is optional field. The format is as shown, which contains a mandatory 4-character code and optional additional information section. At message level, this field is special. This field is repeating field inside the repeating sequence B. This field specifies special processing instructions for the individual payment transactions. It tells the receiving bank how the payment should be handled using predefined codes, optionally with additional information. For example, urgent payment, sweep the account, equivalent amount, other, etc. In ISO, these multiple codes are either handled by having separate XML fields or by having a code value pair where the codes are handled separately by external code lists. ISO even has facility to carry proprietary codes agreed between the entities bilaterally. In ISO, based on the codes, the fields like service level, category purpose code, instruction for creditor and debitor agents are mapped with information. As said, we shall discuss these mapping patterns separately. For now, you just understand that as there are multiple codes in MT101, PAIN.001 and PACS.008 have multiple equivalent fields. The next field is currency transaction amount tag 32B. This is mandatory field. The format is as shown, which contains mandatory currency 3-character code and 15-digit amount. This field specifies the currency and amount of the individual payment transaction to be transferred to the beneficiary. Here, without discussing the field currency original ordered amount tag 33B and field exchange rate tag 36, we cannot understand tag 32B. We will also touch on the field 21F. If you ever done a cross-border payment, then it is easy to understand. Still, I will try to simplify this concept. Imagine you are trying to send USD from USA to your friend in India to INR account. Exchange rate is 1 USD is equal to 90 INR. So when you go to the payment page, you will have two boxes to enter. Either you enter the money in your account currency USD, or you can enter the money in destination currency INR. Whatever you enter, the other currency is calculated based on the exchange rate that is also displayed to you on the channel. Basically, bank channel decides these three attributes. Based on the bank, implementation varies. Here, your account currency is usually mentioned in the 33B currency original ordered amount. The destination currency and amount is mentioned in the 32B, which is what assumed as the instructed amount from customer. And the exchange rate that is shown on the screen is mapped to the tag 36. Now this is the message created from customer channel and mapped to MT101. Now let's say the same will be done by a corporate client using the MT101 FIN file. Here the corporate usually deals in large amounts. So they strike a deal with their bank, that is debtor agent or account servicing institution, and get a special rate, usually better rate than what is mentioned in the bank channel. For this, a deal will be booked and given to the corporate customer with an expiry date also. Within this expiry date, the customer is expected to use the deal and do the payment. Now, when this corporate customer sends the payment, how can bank understand that he has special rate? For this, the deal reference that corporate has will be passed in the tag 21F. Whenever this field is present, the debtor agent is expected to verify internally during payment processing with their treasury system and apply the same FX rate for that payment from the corporate. Now if you see, there are two amounts mentioned in the empty message and they are tied to each other using the exchange rate. In ISO world, this concept is applied differently. I will explain this concept when we discuss the PAIN.001 fields in the next video. For now, you can remember that in PAIN.001, this field is mapped to instructed amount. Even in the PACS.008, this field is mapped to the instructed amount. Next, we have same three fields that are already present in the sequence A. They are instructing party, ordering customer, and account servicing institution. Then why are they again appearing in the repeating sequence B? We have discussed in the previous videos about the batch concept and that MT101 does not have batch concept explicitly. These three fields, when present in sequence A, then they are applicable to all the sequence B payments. Now when customer wants to send different debit accounts for each transaction, then they can send this information in the sequence B, and whatever is mentioned in the sequence B is applicable only to that transaction of sequence B. What if sequence A information and sequence B information does not match? That's why at message level we have a validation where either sequence A elements or sequence B elements can be present, but not both in the same MT101 message. Now another point is the mandatory and optionality of these fields. If you see the spec, all three are mentioned as optional. But if you dig deep into the validations, there you will get more info. Instructing party is optional. That is, it can be present in either sections or it can be absent in both sections based on the scenario. Same is the case with account servicing institution. Please note that this information in the ISO PAIN.001 are mandatory. Now coming to ordering customer, that is debtor. It must be present in either of the sequence A or B. Unlike the other two fields, this cannot be absent in both the sections. That is why I want to mention this as mandatory so that you guys can remember it. The next field is intermediary tag 56A. This is optional field. The format is as shown with three letter options A, C and D. This field identifies the intermediary financial institution through which the payment must be routed before reaching the beneficiary's bank. Now you might be wondering, why would a corporate instruct its debtor agent to send the money via a particular intermediary instead of just instructing to send it to beneficiary bank? Actually, there are multiple use cases for this, but I will tell one that you are clear. Imagine a situation where a supplier who is beneficiary of the payment holds an account in local Kenyan bank. They supply some raw materials to USA and expect the payment to be received in USD. While onboarding the supplier, the Kenyan local bank will provide the correspondent details to the supplier for each currency that they expect to receive the payments. Now, when the supplier raises invoice, they provide their bank details of local Kenyan bank along with the correspondent details that are provided by their bank for the particular currency of payment. Now, when payment is made by the corporate, they mention the Kenyan local bank as creditor agent and this correspondent as the intermediary. You may ask why sender bank cannot determine the correspondence on their own to reach Kenyan local bank. They can, but in reality, sometimes payments would take longer because of wrong correspondence, and sometimes they might be stuck somewhere, and sometimes they might be rejected. To avoid all these delays, this kind of arrangement when intermediary is provided by corporate. As you might have noticed, this intermediary is agent, a financial institution. The PAIN.001 equivalent is intermediary agent 1. Now, the outgoing PACS.008 do not directly map to the intermediary agent 1. Based on the scenario and the number of agents, it can be mapped to different agent sections. We shall discuss this when discussing the PACS.008 processing. The next field is account with institution tag 57A. This is optional field. The format is as shown with 3-letter options A, C and D. This is a straightforward field which identifies the financial institution that holds the beneficiary's account. That is, the beneficiary's bank where the funds must ultimately be credited. If this field is not available in MT101, then the receiver is usually the creditor agent. In ISO world, this field which is mapped to creditor agent is mandatory field. PAIN.001 equivalent is also the same creditor agent, and even in outgoing PACS.008, the same is mentioned in creditor agent. The next field is beneficiary tag 59A. This is mandatory field. The format is as shown with 3 options: no letter, A and F. This is a straightforward field which identifies the beneficiary, the creditor, who will receive the funds, including their account number and name and address. In ISO world, this field which is mapped to the creditor. PAIN.001 equivalent is also same creditor, and even in outgoing PACS.008, the same is mentioned in creditor. The next field is remittance information tag 70. This is optional field. The format is simple 4 times 35x text, but it contains the information using the codes. This field contains the payment reference or details for the beneficiary, explaining what the payment is for. In PAIN.001, it is mapped to the field with the same name, remittance information. The same is passed on in the same field, remittance information, till the beneficiary of PACS.008 receives it. Please note, in ISO, the remittance information has 2 sections. One is unstructured, which is there to support the MT legacy format. So the information from MT is generally mapped directly into unstructured section. But in future, more detailed ISO structured remittance information can be used. This will bring more transparency in the payments carrying information from sender to receiver. The next field is regulatory reporting tag 77B. This is optional field. The format is simple 3 times 35x text field, but it contains the information using the codes. This field carries regulatory or reporting information required by authorities in the country of the sender or receiver. This field can be mapped directly into the same field, regulatory reporting, in PAIN.001. Else, this can also be mapped into the debtor and creditor sections in specific field called country of residence, as the codes in the MT are country of residence only. ISO has more granularity which can be used in future. The next field is currency and original ordered amount tag 33B. This is optional field. The format is currency and amount format as shown here. This field specifies the original currency and amount ordered by the customer for the transaction, particularly when it differs from the transfer amount in 32B due to FX conversion. We have already discussed about this field in detail, including why and where it is mapped to PAIN.001. The next field is details of charges, tag 71A. This field is mandatory. It carries any of three codes hour, ben and SHA. This field specifies who will bear the transaction charges related to the payment. We have done a separate video on this topic and please refer to that video for more details. This is mapped in PAIN.001 with the field name charge bearer. But there are two fields in the PAIN.001 with same name. One is in batch level payment info section and one is in transaction level section. Since MT101 sequence B is transaction level section, I would suggest to map to the transaction level charge bearer. The next field is charges account tag 25A. This field is optional. The format is of the account number format /34x. This field specifies the account to be used for debiting the payment charges if the charges are not to be taken from the main debit account. The PAIN.001 equivalent field is charges account only inside the batch level payment info. This is not needed to be carried forward in PACS.008, so not mapped into PACS.008. The last field in MT101 is the exchange rate tag 36. This is optional field. The format is simple decimal 12D. This field specifies the foreign exchange rate to be applied to the transaction when currency conversion is involved. This is mapped in PAIN.001 with the same field name exchange rate inside exchange rate info section. The same can be carried forward into the PACS.008. Now that we have seen the individual fields of MT101, now let's understand how to recall the important information when it's needed about MT101. Not only that, let's try to link this to PAIN.001 so that we try to create a mental map where we can also try to understand the full PAIN.001. First, do you remember this basic payment scenario? For all account payments, this is fundamental. Now MT101 or PAIN.001 in this are from customer to bank. Now what is really important in MT101? These are the complete fields of MT101. Just this. Now the ones in the red are mandatory fields. If you look at them, first there are two mandatory ID fields at message level and transaction level. This every message has, and you will by default remember it, and they will be mapped according to group header level message ID and transaction level instruction ID. So this is easy. Next is message index and total, which is very specific to MT-FIN. We need not focus on this. Next, I made some fields in bold. These are the fields which you need to concentrate and remember. In these, ordering customer and account servicing institution, nothing but debtor and debtor agent section. They are available at both message and transaction level and only one can be present. Next is value date, which is present only at message level, meaning all transactions in one MT101 execute on same day. Next is currency and transaction amount at transaction level, which vary for each transaction. Then account with institution and beneficiary, which is nothing but creditor agent and creditor at each transaction level. Then based on the transaction scenario like cross-border payments, message may need fields like details of charges, exchange rate, which are at transaction level. Now these things are bare minimum to be remembered for the entire MT101 needed for any scenario. That's all. That should be your primary focus when learning MT101. Now there are other information inside the fields like instruction codes, instructing party, intermediary agent, etc., which are dependent on the scenario and dependent on the bank-to-bank processing. This information will be understood and remembered on the job when you actually work on the message itself. This is how you can make the complicated MT101 into simple mental map. Now from this you correlate with PAIN.001 and remember the important points of PAIN.001 and complete message will be in your mental map. See, this is my personal take on how to read, understand and recollect the many messages of payments when you needed, especially in interviews. If you find useful, then you can follow it. Else, I would suggest you to create your own ways of mental maps to understand and remember the messages. Either way, things should work for us. With this, we come to the end of MT101 fields. In the next video, we will do the same for PAIN.001 fields. Until then, keep smiling and keep learning. Thanks for watching this video. If you like this video, please like, subscribe and share for more such interesting topics on payments.